All right, good morning. Keller Williams in town. It is the first Tuesday of June, and you know what that means. It means your latest edition of Shelter Scriptology is here, and that means you have yet another opportunity to hear from a top producer in the office to share the preparedness that these real estate rock stars bring to their business every day. Today's guest is one of the most experienced salespeople I've ever met. And her energy and drive is evident to everyone she meets. She may be newer to real estate, but when it comes to the job problem solving and finding paths forward for her clients, she brings a lifetime of watching preparation turn into closed business. And today we're going to talk about how her sales journey, her past live experience, all prepared her for her current role, and how mastering the basics allows her to be fully herself in her interaction with clients and to realize that everyone she meets is a potential client. Valerie, thanks for joining us again on Shelter Scriptology. I want you to know I wrote that before you tried to sell me something as we got started.
I did try to sell him something the moment we hit live, so you're not wrong.
That's fantastic. How's your Tuesday going?
Tuesday's going great. The sun's out. It's not cold. It's not humid, and I haven't been bit by a mosquito yet. So,
give it time. Give it time. Well, we just walked out of the Wednesday sales meeting with Mark. Valerie was running it. It was a fantastic meeting. It's one of those meetings that really, if you've been doing sales for a while, it reinforces the things that you know, and reminds you of things that you may have let slip. For example, go ahead.
Or even just, I love, like, you may be jumping off this, but like the magic words, like, I think that's something I love in sales is I feel like anyone can sell anything, but a true salesperson is a ninja with their words and is dropping in these magic words to get people to do like mind games. I almost feel sometimes like, what is it called on Star Wars? A Jedi mind tricks. I love that. When you get out of a call and you drop those pieces in there and they're doing exactly what you want, you're like,
again, she knows her audience because I am a nerd. And I wanted to yell Jedi mind trick. I was like, no, she'll let her get there. That's a bad host if I interrupt her there. But let's talk about kind of your background. Start with you came to us from Las Vegas, Nevada. I know this story, but I want you to make sure everyone else knows it too. Tell me your first job in the field of real estate.
My first job ever. Actually, my first job into just working. I had my mom's friend owned a mortgage company and she needed someone to cold call people to FHA streamline refinance their home. And that is what I jumped on to do at the bright age of 15 and a half years old. And in 2000, what would that have been? 2005, it was a different time because we didn't have people blowing up our phones for like insurance and cruises and this and that. So somehow people heard my 15 and a half year old voice on the other end of the line and confidently talked to me about their mortgages. So it was a different time.
It was a different time, but I think that something that early gives you a good opportunity to get an idea into just how many people are willing to speak to you. Because I think a lot of the self-correction that we have, a lot of the limiting thought behavior is kind of like, well, I don't want to. For example, one of the things I'm working on this week, and I'm saying it out loud so I can be held accountable, is when I do my old client calls or my database calls, I am so friendly and outgoing that I find myself falling into we're having a great chat, and I forget to ask for business or I forget so that's one of my big things for this week. And that's why having Val give that talk today was so powerful, because it spoke directly to something that intellectually I know, but I also intellectually know I need to work on.
Well, and I think cold calling and conversation calling, or even catch up, however you want to phrase it, it's so easy to get lost in the conversation because even though this person knows you, they like you, they trust you, it is not in our normal day-to-day to be like, well, I guess not in some people's, in mine, but it's not normal or doesn't feel comfortable for us to promote ourselves or ask for business or ask for that referral. And so kind of going along with what Val said today, she practiced her scripts. She's been doing this for years, practice her scripts all the time, or even giving us new ways. Like today you asked a question on how to get a referral lead. And I loved how she phrased it. I actually wrote it down for my future leads of really painting the picture. Instead of, do you know anyone looking to buy or sell real estate? It's, do you know anyone looking for a great investment opportunity? Do you know anyone that's sick and tired of paying rent? Because your brain, like, dang, I'm sick and tired of paying rent. You may have not been thinking of that until you brought that up. So I loved even learning some new tools in the tool belt too, as we're having these conversations. Let me back up. If I'm having a conversation with an old client, for me to say, do you know anyone looking to buy or sell real estate, didn't feel that comfortable. It actually felt more exciting for me to say, do you know anyone looking that's sick and tired of paying rent? that takes our business into our conversation. And now that good conversation you're having has also turned into a business conversation.
The thing that I've added to that, I'm starting to use exactly what you're saying. Who do you know is sick of paying rent? And then I follow up with, because if they're anything like you, I would love to work with them.
And that was another magic word, but in a
Mhm.
different phrase. One of the magic words is, oh, if you're anything like me,
Yeah.
well, you know, what are people's number one subject to talk about? Them, right? So if they're anything like you, you're like, oh, you know, little like compliment there. If they're anything like you, I'd love to work with them. So now we're
Right.
stroking the ego, we're helping, you know, we're having a good conversation. Again, it's all in that Jedi mind trick framework.
Well, from helping people using your Jedi mind trick over the phone, which I'm not sure it works that way, you were able to grab the entrepreneurial bull by the horns. We could talk about all your businesses and things you've done since, but I want to focus on real estate because that's why we're here.
Yes.
How long have you had your real estate license?
It'll actually be a year at the end of the month.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's so exciting. So first year under the belt, just kind of what, if you were talking to yourself 12 months ago, what would you say to yourself?
Girl, you did it, because 12 months ago, I had no idea what I was doing. 12 months ago, I had just moved into Atlanta. I quit my W-2 job because I was sick of the grind and just went 2 feet into an industry that is somewhat new to me in a market that's completely new to me. And since then, I've sold 3 houses. I have another buyer on the docket and more filling up my pipeline. So more so, I'd be like, girl, we did it. We're doing it.
There you go. Well, my dad was a salesman, and I think I fought my destiny for so long time. But one of the things he instilled in me growing up was the 7 Ps. Prior proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. And this was applied to school and athletics, but it definitely came from his life as a salesman. So you, like you said, you got into a new business, brand new industry, brand new city, brand new market that's constantly shifting. How did you build that foundation from which you grew from? Because, and I'm not going to blow any, I'm not telling any stories outside of school here. You have been on a rocket pace this year. It's been amazing to watch you come in from the person who came to my office like, "Hi, I'm Dallery. I'm starting out here," and it was never that soft spoken. It was a lot. I'm exaggerating for dramatic effect, but it went from that to what I've seen these last 6 months, and it's been such I don't want to say transformative because you're still you, but it's been such an evolution in watching you in this role. How did the foundation you built in those first 6 months, how did that propel you for today?
Man, I'll tell you, if I took a listing or even a buyer my first month into real estate, I don't know if I'd even be sitting here, because like your dad says, like, you need to prepare in order to not have piss poor performance. Because the first 6 months, I mean, I attended so many Keller Williams trainings. If it's loud, sorry, there's a huge
You're good.
truck going, but I attended so many Keller Williams trainings. I went to so many FMLS. I probably have 8,000 CE credits. Like, I have been going to so many classes. But what was great is, you know, I just kept putting the steps forward, right? So bettering myself, bettering my craft. Like you mentioned before, I come with a very strong sales background. So I know sales, but I need to know how to sell real estate, and more specifically in Atlanta. So I prepared myself that way. But then I also continued to just put down the framework and the steps of putting my name out there and associating with real estate, never stopped talking about it. So when my first client fell into my lap in January, even though it was my first one, I felt ready.
I will say this as someone who was teaching some of those classes in the last year. It was more than you just attending the classes and obviously being blocked in and paying attention. It was watching, because you've been in the things I teach. I like to have conversations. I like to get people's lived experiences. I want to make sure we have enough different perspectives. And you were someone who, as other people were talking, you were always taking notes, because you knew that these were resources. These are people who have done the thing that you've done or wanting to do, and have run into either hurdles or found successes. And you were always diligent about keeping those notes. How often do you go back to those notes? Was that something that was like, hey, when that client landed in your lap, was it a notes thing, or was it like, hey, I'm confident, I'm prepared, I'm ready to go?
It was more like a playbook, right? Like, we know the playbook. We reviewed the playbook. So like when it fell into my lap, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. But you know, when we were like 4th and inches, I had to go back to the playbook to think, okay, what's my play here? What's my move? I know I've learned this before. And honestly, taking notes is just one thing, but people have been successful in real estate before me. There's no need to reinvent the wheel, right? You can go ahead and take what has worked for other people and put your spin on it. So that's partially why I'm taking the notes as well. Is, you know, you have the information. I'm the mouthpiece to my clients so they can get to know the information. And as much as I would like to think that I can like lock it in like a steel trap, it's a game of telephone and they're going from left to right. So
Right.
I've got to write this down.
So, devoid of experience, you lean on expertise, you took classes, you build your knowledge base. How did that allow you, when that first client did come in January, to be nimble? Because I'm going to guess that you didn't know exactly what they were going to ask you when you met them.
Oh my gosh, no. And thankfully, thank you, universe. I had a client who I wish I could remember the disc styles, but she knew exactly what she wanted, her budget, she was no nonsense. And that was
Yeah.
the best client for me to have because she was kind of guiding me through the process because she knew exactly what she wanted. But I'm not going to lie to you. Like I practiced my own scripting, if you will, on how do I talk about a buyer brokerage agreement, right? I've been in classes now for 9 months on how to introduce this document, but now I'm in the seat. I had a great mentor that I got to chat with her a little bit on, and even Mark Jones. If I ran a few scenarios by him, but just practicing. And I've always done this, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, because when you're showering or you're in bed, your brain's not doing a lot of other activities. So somehow those are where my best business ideas come from. And those are somehow how all of my scripted arguments, fights, client conversations, presentations all come into fruition. So when I had that first client, I was practicing, how am I going to introduce this buyer brokerage? I was even sitting down with my fiance, pretending like he was a client, talking about, okay, let's talk about your wants and needs. Where do you want to be? So then when I sat with her, it might've been the first time we were talking, but it wasn't the first time I was having that conversation.
That's fantastic. There's some interview I listened to a sports podcast. There was an interview where he talked about Dwight Howard, and he said that people thought he didn't take the game seriously because he was smiling and laughing while he was on the court. And he said that's because I worked so hard in the practice field, a practice court, that by the time we got to the game, it was fun. And so that made me think of this job, what you've done, and say, hey, look, I've put in the work. I've put in the hours, the sweat, the blood, the making my fiance follow me around and film me, or make him pretend to be a buyer. You've done all these, the hard stuff. And so by the time you get to the practice field or the client conversation, it's fun. It's exciting you to show off what you know without the fear of wading into the unknown, because it all feels known.
Well, and I just read something in a book this morning that it was a coach who helped with PGA Tour golfers, and Tiger Woods came up onto this really extremely difficult hole, and everyone's like, he seems so calm up there. And, the coach essentially said, because he's done this so many times before, that, nerves aren't taking over because he knows exactly what to do. And as real estate agents, like, again, every client is a little different, but the process is the same. The questions may come up are a little different, but I bet you the premise is the same. So the more and more you continue to practice, or, Mark even used ChatGPT today to use that as like scripting practice. If you put your reps in when that opportunity really falls into your lap, you're going to be prepared. You're going to be calm. And what's great about that is when you're not worrying about what to say, your personality comes out, your genuine side comes out. People get to see who you are, and not, hello, this is Valerie, because you're so worried about what to say.
Dowry, I don't know any lack of experience with kept yourself in, but I'm glad that you said that for everyone listening. You're right, because and one of my favorite sayings is that structure gives us the freedom to be free.
Yep.
So if you gave me a blank piece of paper and a bunch of crayons, I'd be like, I don't know what to draw.
Where do we start?
If you give me an outline and say color wherever you want, it's going to become a lot differently, a lot better. One of the things that I took from Mark, and that I think I've seen you do, is you remove yourself from the outcome. You listen to your clients. And the most important thing I hear when I talk to people about the scriptology and the scripting and the preparedness is I tell them the most important part of the conversation is the listening part. Mm-hmm. We can say all the information we want, but if I'm selling you size 10 shoes and you've told me you wear size 14, everyone's getting their time wasted.
Well, and how many times have you been on the receiving end of that? So many times. And there's so many times I get so frustrated. And you asked me this on another interview before, like, doctors are the worst patients and that kind of thing. But salespeople are the worst people to sell to, especially salespeople, because when people are really lack, or they don't listen, or, you've told someone this 7 times, my patience for that is low. Cause I'm like, my G, write this down, go back to the playbook. I've told you this before. And so listening is a huge part. And again, when you have practiced and you know what you're going to ask next, or you know what comes down in this conversation, that gives you the opportunity to listen to what the client isn't saying. Because there's sometimes the client is telling you, oh, I need 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. I've got a kid. We like to entertain, da, da, da. There might be little pockets of information unveiling what they really want in a house, right? Open concepts, they love to entertain, a good school, or anything else, when you're not only listening for what they're saying, if that makes sense.
And it makes perfect sense. And it's active listening. It's not just saying, oh, I heard you, I'm keep doing my pitch. It's being able to, it's having the confidence in what you know to be able to adapt on the fly.
Well, and how many times, and maybe this is me and my entrepreneurial experience and all the logo designs I've had to do, I do not have a creative bone in my body in that sense, right? I have a vision of how I want a brand to be, but I can't tell you what that logo is going to look like. I have a designer I work with, and I give her my description. I'm basically the client, right? Giving her my description, how I want people to feel, what's the premise. She puts together a logo that was exactly what I had in my brain, but I had no idea. And as real estate agents, we have the opportunity to do that as well. If you really listen between what the client is saying, you have the opportunity to show them a house that maybe they didn't even know what it looked like, or a neighborhood that they didn't even know was there, that meets all their needs, if you're able to listen actively and in between the lines. And it really just comes back to practicing, right? So you're not nervous and in your head, like, what am I going to say next? You already know what you're going to say next. Now you can sit and listen to the client and lob the question in there when they're ready.
One of the reasons I do this on Monday, on the first Tuesday of the month, is because we get to come off of that sales meeting. So one of the conversations that we had today with Val was anticipating no's gives you power.
Yes.
And so I in my business, it's the control over the rate conversation. I always bring it up because I don't want them to be like, well, what's the rate?
Yep.
Great. I love to take advantage of that because it shows not just my experience, but it demonstrates my knowledge of the market. How has being able to, and again, every client's different. You can't be, no one's going to be 100%. I know exactly what I'm going to say, but you can get pretty close because most people are actually people.
Mm-hmm. And I always say this, if I can handle the worst case scenario, I can handle anything above that. So odds are the client may give me a no, or the client may be worried about something, or the client may have this scenario that's run in their head, worst case, we're in due diligence, da, da, da. But the odds are I've probably ran a scenario 15 times worse in my head because I'm just a worrier by nature. And if I can handle that, clogged sewer, not connected to the city line, and this is how I'm going to solve that, I can solve anything in between. But if you have experience, or again, when you're scripting or you're script practicing with your partner, your intern, whoever, ChatGPT, make them say no, make them give you some objections, because you don't, again, getting those reps in, you don't have the experience with an objection if you never receive an objection. So you can't always practice the script to go in the most perfect way ever, because that's just not reality, and it's not going to best prepare you for what's actually out there. And I always say, like, if I can handle the worst case scenario, which in most cases in sales is a no, I can handle anything else in front of that. And it's our job as salespeople. Let's anticipate the no, and what are our 3 solutions? Because a no is tough. I've had to deliver tough situations. I worked for an event company where I was merely a broker to a bunch of suppliers. So a lot of times the outcome of the event, it's not even my fault.
It's outside of your control.
It's outside of my control.
Wow.
So if a vendor drops the ball and I'm the first one to hear about it, I now have to come up with, okay, what are my solutions? What's going to get me what the client is expecting for, little to no change in price or experience, etc. So you have to work through those things. As a real estate, it's no different. So clients are okay with no, if they expect them. And I'm sure you've experienced this, right? Like, hey, I'm going to lock you in at, 6.5. If we don't find a house outside your lock, it could go up, could go down.
Right.
If you tell them what could happen and be truthful, sometimes it's not all roses, and you're truthful. If that worst case scenario comes up, your client's not as upset because they knew it was coming. People don't like to be surprised, especially with bad news. And, if you're going to hit them with the no, what is the alternative? What is the yes?
We're solutions oriented people. We're here to be problem solvers, not problem creators. It's very funny. I had a meeting with a real estate agent yesterday. He was the listing agent at one of my closings last month, and we were sitting down. And he said, "What's the one thing you like here about your business?" Says, "No one likes bad news.
No,
but everyone hates surprises." And so and that's the ability to communicate and have anticipation, and that goes back to not just communicating with your client, but communicating with the whole ecosystem of a deal. Because again, no one likes bad news, but bad news happens. That is life. Everyone hates a surprise. If things are good one day, then all of a sudden they're not, that's going to create torsion. It's going to create, how do we get here? And you may not have a solution yet, but if you know, hey, this is something that could come up, and like you said, be prepared for those solutions-oriented actions to take place when they are needed.
And I think the scripting during this conversation, we've really been focusing on clients. It's also towards your listing agent. It's also towards your lending partner, towards your appraiser. Everyone in the real estate transaction, we're all going towards the same goal. And I know sometimes when you work, when you co-op with different agents, it doesn't feel like that, but we are all trying to get to the closing table. So like you said, nobody likes to know, nobody likes a surprise, but if you can come up with the solution, and when you're listening throughout the process, right? What was important to the seller? What is important to the buyer? Navigating all of those perspectives and expectations also makes a really great agent. And again, just continuing to practice with solutions, with scripting. When you're in the shower and your brain is running on a worst case scenario, let it run. Let it run. Get that practice in on how would you handle that scenario? How could you have those conversations? And sometimes if you walk past the shower and I'm in it, you'll hear me actually talking because I'm practicing. I've called people out in the shower, all sorts of stuff just to get it out and practice, because in your head is one thing, but getting it all out, that's the full loop, the practice loop.
I had another question, but I want to respect your time. I don't want to keep you too long. Yeah. I do want to talk about this. So you have a natural sales background because you've done so much sales, and you've been able to apply that to real estate in a way that I found very fascinating from the intellectual level. I want to ask you this, because you're like me. When you're passionate about something, you get very excited about it. When you're excited about it, you want to share everything you know. How do you keep yourself from just dumping the knowledge on the borrower? How do you keep yourself just give them what they need? You're like me. It's been a challenge. It's you know what that is? It's an opportunity for growth. And so I want to speak to your growth in that avenue, because I'm like you. I want to share. Look, houses, here's how cool they can be. Here's everything you can do for you. How do you find out? And again, it's going to go back to the listing, but how do you decide not just how to parse it out, but when to parse it out to best benefit the borrower?
You know the term love bombing?
I do.
I feel like I have to hold myself back from information bombing. You know what I mean?
Are you the real estate Joe? What is happening?
I could be that. I could be photo booth Joe, whatever I'm excited, Raider Joe, but that's something I do. I get excited. I get passionate. I read a lot. I dump that information out, but sometimes I have to check myself and actually, I guess I should do it like this. Becomes more of a game because I'm able to give it to them piece by piece. So kind of like the game of life, right? We start here, we meet each other, we make it to the closing table, all the way to the end. But along the way, I get the opportunity to share this knowledge. And it's definitely come through trial and error, because I've love bombed people and information bombed people, and they're looking at me like, I have no idea what you said. Yeah. So if I want them to retain the information, then I give it to them in little bite-sized pieces. And I always have to remind myself, how many houses do people normally buy in their lifetime? Do you know that stat?
I'd say 3 to 4, maybe 2 to 3.
I've sold 3 to 4 houses in 6 months. Right? So I have to take a step back and just say, just because I do this over and over and over again, doesn't mean they understand everything I'm saying. Even if it's something as simple as, and this is how I've been humbled a few times, during due diligence, we'll protect your earnest money. And I'm going through and they say, what's earnest money? Let me take a step back.
Yeah.
Right? So those experiences, to be honest, have kind of humbled me and, taken me a step back to really give them the information piece by piece. And in my brain, I know they're going to get all the information. I know they're going to walk away from this transaction feeling empowered and feeling educated, because those are my goals. It doesn't all need to happen in the first day.
What's really interesting is before we hopped on this call, we finished up the meeting, and then of course people wanted to come by I'm like, I have to be on I'm actually about to, sorry, the video's about to, I got to set up but it was funny because an agent came by and said they had a client and they were working on maybe selling their house first. And I said, well, do they need the assets? He said, well, no. I go, have you talked to them about maintaining the property and turning it into a rental? And they said, well, they never really brought it up. I said, why haven't you brought it up?
Yep.
And I said, if you want, I offered myself, said, no pressure. Because that's what I did. And being able to use my lived experience, you've done it too. And being able to use your lived experience, not just in the sales sphere, but in the real estate sphere, makes it more relatable. It makes it real. It makes it tangible.
Well, and also you and I have spoken about this so many times.
Yeah.
People that are like, oh, I have a rental home, I have this. I was like, man, these people must be rich. Multiple houses. You guys are crazy. But until, you're in it and you had your house, and then you got married and you moved to another house and you didn't need assets. Now you're like, oh, I see how this happens. And like you said, by, you're a regular person. I'm a regular person. We're not billionaires. We're not investment companies, and we had rental properties. So taking that from a wow, I could never to, oh, this is realistic is also part of my job. And I think the best way, and I say this all the time, I love selling from the soapbox that I stand on, which is I bought my house using a grant. It wasn't my dream home. I invested money to make it what I wanted. I, brought my house up to market value to have it move quicker. All these things I would tell a client I've done myself. Yeah. So, and I think that also brings you down to a human level to, oh, Dollar, my agent, yeah, she's just like me. If she can do it, I can do it.
And I think that's the real, honest to God, and I hate it's the end of this, that we're getting to the crux of why I want to do Scriptology, is because the more structure you have, the more your self pours through, the more relatable you are to your clients.
Yes.
And that in and of itself is the end result. I don't want anyone to be a robot, but I do want people to be able to share their lived experiences to show how their lives have informed their decision making and how they've gotten here. Like you said, we are in an industry that is largely aspirational. There's millions of people across this great land who say, I could never own a home. And the 100%. Ability to make it personal makes it, inspirational versus aspirational. Inspirational, I could never own a home, homes for the people. Aspirational is, well, Dowry and Daniel were normal as hell. They figured it out. Why not me? And
I had a trash credit score.
Why not me? If you can go from why not me, then we can get you to a closing table. And I think that's the message that is so powerful that we need people to hear and be aware of. And I think that's why it's so glad I've been so impressed and so enjoyed watching you blossom into this real estate agent, to go from this woman who was drinking decaf and yelling at me like she was mainlining caffeine. And I'm just like, wait, what's happening here? Where are all these questions coming from? And then here a year later, which you said a year and I couldn't believe it.
I can't believe it.
Watching you not only talk about your experiences, but talk about how certain things humbled you and how things have redefined themselves in your process. And I just want to just take these last 2 minutes and say, I'm so happy for you. I'm excited to watch your career. I'm excited to be part of your career. And I'm excited you sat down with me today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the support and providing this platform, because I think I've been tuning in ever since you've had it. It's just great to hear other agents' experience, and also to know, even though I'm a new agent, when you had Valerie and Mark, and to hear that they're still practicing, I'm like, okay, I'm doing all right. The bar is set, and we're going to get there. And when we get there, we're still going to continue to learn and better our craft. So thank you for your time and the platform, and anyone listening, you got this. You got this.
I'm going to leave you with one last piece of David Palmer propaganda. Good work does not mean rest. Good work only leads to more good work.
That part.
You're the living example. Dowry, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next month here on Shelter Scriptology.
Thank you, Daniel.